It all started on an unusually warm September evening in Chicago. Rachel Evans wasn't looking for love that night. She had just wrapped up a long shift at the downtown architecture firm she'd worked at for nearly 4 years. She was 31, independent, sharp and content, at least on the surface. That night, her best friend Carmen had dragged her out for drinks at a swanky rooftop bar, claiming she needed fresh air and maybe a fresh man. That's when she met Nathan Whitaker. Nathan was charming in the kind of effortless way that made you feel seen. He had that polished businessman look, navy-tailored suit, gold cufflinks, the perfect 5 o'clock shadow, and an even more polished way of talking. He asked Rachel questions and actually listened. He laughed at her sarcasm and complimented her ideas, not her dress. He was different. Or so she thought. They began dating soon after. Nathan worked as a senior project executive at one of the city's most respected construction firms. Big deals, big pressure, he'd say with a modest shrug. Rachel found his ambition attractive, his confidence magnetic. For the first few months it was like a movie montage. Fancy dinners, spontaneous weekend getaways, a surprise bouquet of peonies on her desk, just because. He would hold her hand in meetings, whispering, "You're the smartest person in this room." He wanted to know everything about her, her dreams, her fears, even her childhood scars. Rachel had never felt more adored. So when he proposed 6 months later at the edge of Lake Michigan under a firework-lit sky, she said yes without hesitation. They got married in the spring. The ceremony was elegant, understated, and perfect. Rachel wore a simple silk gown with lace sleeves, her hair loosely curled, glowing with happiness. Nathan cried during the vows, big proud tears, and promised her forever. Guests whispered about how in sync they seemed. "They're going to be that power couple," someone said. Rachel believed it. At first, married life with Nathan felt like an extension of the fairy tale. Their downtown loft was filled with light, laughter, and late-night wine-fueled conversations about building a life together. Nathan called her his anchor, and told her she made him better. He'd still bring her coffee in bed and text her midday just to say he missed her. But then something shifted. Subtly. Quietly. Like hairline cracks in glass you don't notice until the whole thing shatters. Started with the little things. Nathan became distracted. Shorter phone calls. Less eye contact. A constant tension under his words. He stopped asking about her day, forgot dinner plans, started canceling on her 4 last-minute project reviews. At first she rationalized it was the busy season, he was under pressure. But it didn't feel right. The warmth that used to radiate from his eyes began to cool. Then came the corrections. The disapproval. He'd say things like, "You always take things so personally," or, "Maybe you're just too sensitive." When she raised concerns, he'd deflect, dismiss, or twist her words into knots until she doubted her own memory. It wasn't constant, but enough to leave bruises she couldn't name. He still smiled in public, kissed her cheek at dinner parties, told their friends how lucky he was. But at home he became colder. Distant. She couldn't tell if he was annoyed with her, bored, or just somewhere else entirely. She started feeling like a roommate. A placeholder. But she still loved him. She tried harder. Planned romantic dinners. Left little notes in his briefcase. Gave him space. She didn't want to be the wife who nags. She hoped this was just a rough patch. "Nathan?" He said all the right things. "I've just been swamped, babe. You know how it is. You're overthinking. Everything's fine. I love you. Of course I love you." But his touch felt rehearsed now. His words like filler. She couldn't remember the last time he looked at her like he used to. Then came the night she found his shirt in the laundry basket, an expensive white one she hadn't seen him wear in weeks. She was folding clothes absent-mindedly when she noticed a faint smudge on the collar. Pinkish. Creamy. Her breath caught. He stared at it for what felt like minutes. Her fingers brushed the stain. Foundation. She didn't wear that brand. The ache in her stomach was instant. Final. She didn't say anything that night. Or the next. Instead she began to watch. To listen. And Rachel, sharp, perceptive, and underestimated, started to see everything clearly. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of her rise. Rachel had always been intuitive. It was one of the reasons she was so good at her job. She could read people, sense the unspoken. But when it came to Nathan, she had silenced that voice inside her for too long. Love made her second-guess herself. Now that voice was screaming. After discovering the foundation stain, Rachel became a quiet observer in her own marriage. Nathan's behavior, once brushed off as stress, now looked different, calculated. His once urgent late-night meetings were almost routine now. He had developed an entire script. He'd kiss her forehead, say, "Long night. Don't wait up," grab his laptop and vanish. Sometimes he'd forget to come home altogether. Rachel didn't cry. She didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, she began collecting the pieces of a picture she didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. She started keeping a private journal, jotting down dates, times, names he mentioned, odd receipts. Once she found a receipt from an upscale restaurant where they used to go on anniversaries. Only this time the reservation had been for two. On a Wednesday. When he told her he was in Milwaukee for a client visit. The lies were piling up. But the cruelty came in quieter ways. Nathan had stopped being interested in her work, her ideas, her presence. If she brought up a creative project she was excited about, he'd say things like, "You know they'll never promote you," or, "That firm isn't going anywhere." When she dressed up, he'd barely look. If she wore something simple, he'd critique her. Nothing she did felt right. She realized she had started dressing down, walking softer, editing her thoughts before speaking, just to avoid his mood swings. There were no bruises. No shouting. But there was something just as dangerous, emotional erosion. He chipped away at her confidence with sighs, dismissive glances, condescending advice. He wanted control. But more than that, he wanted her small. Rachel, though, had begun to remember who she was before him. One night, while Nathan was working late, she curled up on the couch and opened her laptop. She wasn't looking for evidence, she had enough of that. He was looking for apartments. In another city. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. Was she really doing this? Yes. She found a listing in Portland. A studio loft, modest, light-filled, surrounded by trees. It reminded her of who she used to be. She bookmarked it. Days later, another crack appeared, this one not subtle at all. It was a Friday night. Nathan came home well past midnight. Rachel was still awake, sitting at the kitchen island with a cup of cold tea and a heart full of questions. He smelled like cologne she didn't recognize. He didn't even flinch. "Didn't think you'd still be up," he said, loosening his tie, acting casual. She looked at him carefully. "Whose foundation was it?" He blinked, paused, then gave a practiced smile. "What are you talking about?" Rachel reached behind her and held up the shirt she'd set aside. "This." His eyes flicked to the collar. "You're being paranoid, Rach." "No," she said softly. "I'm finally being honest." He laughed, that low, sarcastic kind of laugh that made her skin crawl. "God, you're exhausting." That was it. Not a denial. Not an apology. Exhausting. She stood up. "Come, clear." "I'm leaving," she said. Nathan froze. The smile disappeared. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Rachel said. "I already found a place. I'll be gone in 2 weeks." "You're overreacting. You're not thinking clearly. I've never thought more clearly in my life." He took a step forward, his voice tightening. "You think you can just walk away from this marriage? From me?" "I'm not walking away," she said. "I'm walking back to myself." She left the kitchen, her tea still cold, her mind suddenly warm with something she hadn't felt in months, power. But before she left for good, Rachel had one more thing to do. She wasn't just going to walk away. She was going to make sure Nathan never treated another woman like this again. Rachel had 2 weeks before her move to Portland, but she wasn't going to waste them packing boxes and licking her wounds. She had been broken once, she had swallowed the silence, dimmed herself for love, doubted her own reality for the sake of peace. Not anymore. Rachel was methodical. If Nathan had taught her anything, it was how to play the long game without blinking. So she took her time and did what she did best, research. Nathan worked for a high-profile firm called Halston and Marks Construction. They handled multi-million-dollar commercial projects and were proud of their reputation for being clean and efficient. Nathan often bragged about how indispensable he was to the company. That Rachel knew was a lie. She remembered little things, remarks he made in passing that didn't seem important at the time. Names of clients, strange weekend business trips. Times when he logged into strange email accounts from his laptop when he thought she wasn't looking. He started digging. At first, it was slow. Old documents, copied receipts, random bank transfers she'd spotted over the years while glancing at their shared credit statements. But the more she searched, the clearer the pattern became. Nathan had created a shell company under a fake name, registered in Delaware, and was funneling project funds into it. His game was simple. Inflate project costs, then reroute the surplus into this ghost account. On paper it all looked clean. In reality it was fraud on a corporate scale. Rachel gathered everything. She knew she couldn't just accuse him, she needed evidence that would be undeniable and explosive. So she built a digital folder. Invoices. Wire transfers. Project budgets with inflated costs. Matching entries in his personal calendar and deleted emails she recovered from the recycle bin. She even found one audio recording from a Zoom call where Nathan instructed a junior project manager to pad the numbers and not ask too many questions. Sloppy. Desperate. Perfect. Rachel didn't go to the police. Not yet. She wrote an email. A single beautifully crafted message, addressed to the executive board of Halston and Marks. She detailed the entire scheme with time-stamped documentation, account details, and names of people Nathan had manipulated along the way. But she didn't hit send right away. Instead, she waited until the morning she left town. Nathan didn't bother to say goodbye that day. He hadn't even asked where she was going. He'd assumed her threat to leave was emotional theater. Because men like him believed women like her couldn't survive without them. At exactly 9 a.m. Rachel clicked send. And then she walked out of the apartment for the last time, dragging 2 suitcases and a duffel bag down the hallway. By noon her inbox had exploded. The company had forwarded the email to their legal department. Someone from their internal compliance team asked to speak with her for verification. He gave them everything. That evening, while sipping tea on the balcony of her short-term rental in Portland, she got a text from Carmen. Holy SHT, Nathan just got suspended. Internal audit starting. You're a legend. Rachel didn't respond right away. She just stared at the sky, felt the wind against her face, and let herself smile. This wasn't revenge. Not exactly. This was truth finally unchained. The storm hit Nathan like a punch he never saw coming. One moment he was strutting into Halston and Mark's glass-paneled office, exchanging smug grins and snapping finger guns at interns. The next he was being called into a conference room by 2 unfamiliar faces from legal and 1 stone-faced man from HR. He didn't even get to sit down. There's been a serious accusation, one of them said. Financial misconduct. Project embezzlement. We've launched an internal investigation effective immediately. Nathan scoffed. This is ridiculous. The man from legal slid a folder across the table. This isn't a joke, Mr. Whitaker. We've received highly detailed documentation, emails, audio, account traces. The numbers match. You've been padding project budgets and siphoning funds into a private entity. Nathan's fingers twitched. His jaw clenched. He tried to talk his way out of it, tried his usual tactics. Disbelief, deflection, indignation. But they weren't listening. They weren't charmed. They were prepared. And worst of all, they had everything. Within 24 hours his company laptop was confiscated. His access badge was deactivated. By the end of the week he was officially terminated, pending potential legal action. The board issued a public statement distancing the firm from his actions. His contacts stopped answering his calls. His favorite whiskey bar revoked his corporate tab. His phone buzzed with reporters asking for comments on the allegations. But Nathan wasn't thinking about his reputation. He was thinking about Rachel. It hadn't taken him long to connect the dots. The timing. The detail. Only she could have known some of those things. Only she had the patience, the intelligence, the motive. At first he was furious. He paced the apartment, punched walls, screamed into pillows. How could she do this to him? But deep down he knew the answer. He had underestimated her. Meanwhile, in Portland, Rachel was building a new life. She found a job within 2 weeks, junior creative strategist at a mid-sized design firm that valued collaboration and actual work-life balance. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. She rode her bike to work, made friends over coffee, and finally slept through the night without wondering where her husband was. She didn't check the news often, but sometimes she'd hear whispers. Nathan's name mentioned in hushed tones on industry blogs. Rumors about pending lawsuits. Unconfirmed reports of criminal charges. And always a photo of him looking just slightly more hollow, more undone. She never reached out. Not when he called. Not when he emailed. Not when he left a voicemail on her birthday saying, "I miss you. Please, call me." She blocked his number and went for a walk in the rain. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't scared. She was free. One night, Rachel was invited to speak at a local women in business panel. She almost declined, but something in her stirred. She stood in front of a room full of strangers and told them about transformation, not the kind with fireworks, but the kind that begins quietly in the middle of heartbreak. "I used to think strength looked like staying," she said. "Now I know it looks like walking away. With your dignity. With your truth." The room fell silent. Then applause. Then hugs. Rachel went home that night and looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't see the woman who'd begged for attention, who'd waited in the dark for someone who didn't deserve her. She saw someone else now. Someone whole. It had been 16 months since Rachel last saw Nathan's face. She didn't follow him on social media, didn't ask mutual friends for updates, didn't care for the slow-motion unraveling of his carefully curated life. But sometimes the news still found her. His fraud case had gone public. The company, desperate to save face, had filed a civil suit. The criminal charges were still pending, but the damage was done. Nathan Whitaker, once a rising star in Chicago's corporate elite, was now an industry cautionary tale. Rachel was in a different world now. Portland had changed her. She'd been promoted twice, now working as a creative director at the firm. She led a small team, mentored interns, and had her own office with floor-to-ceiling windows. She wasn't rich, not the way Nathan measured success, but she was respected, peaceful, empowered. She lived in a cozy apartment near the water. She adopted a rescue dog named Murphy, started hiking on weekends, and hosted small dinners for the friends she'd made. Her laughter came easily now. So did her sleep. Then one morning a letter arrived. A real one. Handwritten. No return address. Just her name in Nathan's sharp, familiar script. She sat with it for nearly an hour before opening it. "Rachel, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I wouldn't if I were you. I just need you to know. You were right. About all of it. About me. About the lies. I told myself I was the victim in all of this. I played that role for a long time. But watching everything fall apart, my job, my name, my life, I see it now. I destroyed it all, and you were the only one who tried to save me before it was too late. I didn't deserve you. I never did. I hope you're okay. I hope you found what you were looking for. I don't expect to hear back. I just wanted you to know. I lost everything. But you won. Nathan." Rachel folded the letter gently and placed it in a drawer she rarely opened. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply breathed. It wasn't about winning. It never had been. It was about surviving, rebuilding, becoming. And she had done all three. A few weeks later, she was asked to speak at a national conference for women in leadership. The theme, turning pain into power. On stage, in front of hundreds of women, Rachel told her story, not with bitterness but with clarity. She spoke of love and manipulation, silence and awakening. She spoke of how sometimes the hardest thing to do is walk away from the life you thought you wanted, into the life you actually deserve. After the talk, a young woman approached her in tears. "Thank you," she said. "I didn't know I was allowed to leave." Rachel smiled gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are," she said. "You always were." And as she walked out of the conference hall into the golden afternoon light, Rachel realized she didn't just survive Nathan. She transcended him. She had become her own rescue, her own story, her own future.